Hello everyone, and welcome to the cryptocurrency news channel. I know there is a bit of a wind noise and the ground noise, but that's because I'm actually recording this straight on my bicycle and not just voice-overing it. But we're actually going to talk about why the United States of America, our proud country, actually really needs to get into blockchain, crypto, and cryptocurrency and CBDCs. And no joke, man, we're really late. China actually has already started to test and issue their CBDC. Europe and France has already tested their CBDC. That's on Corda. China's on its own system in conjunction with Hyperledger Fabric. And we know BRICS is coming up with their coin, and now we know that China has actually proposed an Asian coin backed by the Chinese yuan, the Japanese dollar, the Hong Kong dollar, and the Korean won. So that is a 4-country stablecoin, and those are, well, at least China and Japan are huge economic powers, and South Korea isn't too shabby either. Hong Kong, I think, is just something extra they threw in there because for its size, it is an economic powerhouse, and it's one of the special zones of China, and since it's actually under Chinese control, that just gives China more influence over the coin. So China is being strategic in actually how they design this Asian CBDC. You know, like, they have some pretty smart people in the administration, and since they have like full control over their economy, they can propose things that the US cannot. Now, any individual CBDC will actually not have the power to take over the US dollar as the Federal Reserve, but one of these combinations of many countries can. Technically, this is basically like an Asian version of the original proposed Facebook Libra, which got scrapped because the powers that be are afraid that it might cause economic instability. But however, no one's really going to oppose these regional coins because it's the central banks themselves of these countries that actually propose this. China is the superpower in the Asia region, and a lot of countries are kind of sick of the United States, especially in light of the current administration, and they might actually want to join up and group up and form their own like kind of alliance to actually oppose the US dollar. One, because of the massive printing of the US dollar, and two, because there's just like they just think there's too much US influence in the world. So the thing is, like, one of these CBDCs, like this Asian alliance currency thing that's being proposed by China, or like the digital euro, which will probably be adopted by the Eurozone, or, you know, maybe like a Latin America dollar whenever they get around to it, or even like the BRICS thing, may have enough economic power at some time along the line to actually displace the US dollar. And that would have large consequences for the United States. The reason the US has such power in the world is A, because they're military, and B, because the USD is the reserve currency. If the USD is no longer the reserve currency, then the US won't have nearly as much pull on the world. Now, the US is never going to have the same pull as they had right after World War II, because like pretty much every other country was devastated by World War II, well, all the industrial ones anyways, and the US was, aside from Pearl Harbor, was relatively untouched in their own country, so our factories weren't bombed to shit. So, you know, you had an advantage at that time that you will never have at any other time. I guess you can try to bomb other countries again, but with so many nuclear powers in the world, that most likely will not fly. So trying to maintain the same kind of dominance that the US had right after World War II is basically impossible. But to prevent the dominance from deteriorating much faster, the US actually needs to get involved in one of these alliance CBDCs. They need to actually propose one for North America, or propose one for NATO or something like that. If they do not, other countries will form alliances, and the United States will actually be left out in the cold. And that will be extremely bad. Because, you know, like, our currency will get left out, and it won't be part of one of these CBDCs that eventually becomes the reserve currency. Now, I'm not saying it'll happen in the next year or the next 5 years or even the next 10 years, but over, you know, the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, you know, it could actually happen. Especially if a lot of other countries pool their resources together. No one country can overtake the United States. I don't think any country really can in the next 20 years or so. Even if China surpasses the US's GDP, the GDP per capita in China will be actually much, much lower. So I don't consider China actually a rich country right now, because the average wage compared to their living costs is still not that high, especially in the countryside. Trust me, you go like 100 miles outside of Beijing, you will see that the country is not that rich. I've been there multiple times on vacation. And the thing is, in the next 30 years, like if China, India, Japan, Korea, and some of those Southeast Asian countries align to make an actual currency, that can have enough power to topple the US. Same thing with France, Germany, Great Britain, and Europe. I mean, the euro didn't really fly all that well, but still, I mean, that's the threat that alliance currencies pose to the United States, because they're much stronger than the individual countries together. And so to keep its dominance in the world, and to keep its economic dominance in the world, the US actually needs to join or propose one of these alliances. Otherwise, its economic power in the world is going to go down. And if that goes down, we will no longer have the power to affect world affairs, which would prove pretty disastrous for us in the future. Might be good for other countries, but definitely bad for the United States of America. And that's why we need to actually get on the CBDC, crypto, and blockchain hype train. All right, that is this episode. Let me know if you agree with me. Like and subscribe, and hit that bell notifications button. Thank you, and have a nice day.